Hello, I'm Mark, and this is the Fast Track Impact podcast for researchers who want to be more productive and achieve real-world impacts from their research. So today I'm at University of Salford. I've had the pleasure of just delivering some training to a bunch of mainly early career researchers, which has been fun. And I'm here with three colleagues, two from University of Salford, one from University of Warwick. Because I am a bit of a fan of what is going on here in Salford and wanted to share what I see as good practice here more broadly with others in the sector. Now, I think this week's episode is probably going to be more of interest to those of you who are in professional services roles, so researcher, development, impact officers, things like that. But as a researcher, listen to this and ask yourself, actually, am I catered for enough? What are my training needs? And to what extent do I have a plan in my mind? And is there any coherence to this? Or is this pretty much just random? I need something now and I'm going to find something. And yeah, it doesn't really all add up. Because for me, one of the things that I've been inspired most by is hearing how in Salford and in Warwick, there is a real long-term perspective on building capacity around impact and other issues that is about really understanding the needs of researchers and then tailoring a training package which goes over the course of years in a very much additive ways. Like, each step builds on the last, and there are various points at which you check in and find out how people are getting on. And to me, there's a rigor, there's a depth to this that is unusual, and something that I think that others can learn from. And also the way in which you build opportunities for people to build off of the things that they've just been at. So today was a great example. We're doing impact training, and you're instantly advertising a media training off the back of this, and selling that to people. Apply what you just learned today. This is your next step, where you go. So there's this real sense of coherence that I'm seeing running all the way through this. So I'd like to start with Emma Sutton. So Emma, you're impact coordinator for University of Salford. You're in charge of the whole impact team here. And I think you were an impact officer before that. Was that?
No. This is the first time I've been involved in impact. I took over the role about a year and a half ago, so this is my first introduction to impact. Before that, I worked with the PGR community quite widely, but yeah, this is a completely new role for me. So I've been learning as I've been going along myself. So.
Fantastic. So what I really like about the training here in Salford is you've got this nice mix. You do some stuff in-house, you bring in experts as required. And as head of the impact team, you can see not only what needs to be done for the urgent deadlines in the UK, we've got a research excellence framework deadline looming, but you keep a very clear sight on the long-term game of the capacity you need to build amongst your research community at whatever level around impact, and you're not getting too distracted by the various scary deadlines that are coming up for your team. And I think for many of the impact officers and others involved in impact, listening to this, I want to get a sense of to what extent, when you're in an impact role in professional services, training should be part of your role. Now, for some people, it's written into their job description, they are expected to run training, whether or not they've got any expertise or experience in that, I sometimes find. But you learn on the job, and great. For others, it's not part of your job description, and it's something that people like Davina and Sandy do. We can come on to them in a moment. And I don't really get too involved in that. So what can you do as professional services staff involved with impact to really proactively start to identify and meet needs and build capacity amongst your group of academics? And tell us a bit about your approach.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it is part of some impact coordinator or impact officer roles. It is a very small part of mine, but because I came into the role new, it wasn't something I had any experience of doing. I've never delivered training in my life, so again, that's been a bit of an upward curve in learning. I have started doing a couple of workshops myself, but generally I do call on the expertise of Davina and her team to help me with that. And obviously outside help, such as yourself, we have a couple of external trainers who come in to deliver impact workshops as well. We also have a team of academic impact coordinators who kind of sit underneath me, and I do call upon them to help me with aspects such as training as well. But in terms of actually trying to build capacity over time now, we have in place a series of impact action plans with our key researchers who are engaging in impact. It has mainly been with the ref in mind so far, but obviously we're looking to widen that out, and it is a beyond ref strategy. So the impact action plans set a series of objectives for the impact leads to try and develop their impact, whether it's for a case study or for funding or for whatever it might be for. And that involves looking at what their training needs might be. So we're trying to identify that and see where there are gaps in training so that I can then speak to Davina more closely with that, and she can help me to design a programme that suits the individual needs of different groups of people. So we're working through from the PGR community through to ECRs, through to more senior researchers who might not still have any impact experience. So we're trying to do it across the board, but tailor it to individual needs. So I think that's something Davina can maybe explain a little bit more about.
Yeah. So again, there's going to be a theme running through this, which is this strategic, long-term thinking about building capacity. And what I like about this is how you've got an impact plan. There's a long-term strategy here, and that is what is driving your training agenda, and you're filling gaps as required, but in a very targeted way that then contributes to your REST strategy, but to your broader impact in the long term. I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about how this feels from your perspective, doing training yourself, and I think especially someone who's come into this without so much experience in impact roles before. And from my side of the fence, I think there are real benefits of doing internal training in-house within your own team for your academic community, but also in terms of your own career and your own personal, professional development. And I wonder what you would say to other people in roles like yours who frankly feel quite terrified by the prospect of training. Academics of all people, I mean, it's a pretty hard bunch, has to be said. And standing up there, how have you gotten over that barrier? And what are some of the benefits that you're seeing in terms of your own professional development, those in your team who are doing this, their professional development, and the academic community that you serve by doing that?
Well, I've started small, so rather than facing a massive room of people, which is obviously very intimidating, I have done training for much smaller audiences, generally PGRs, because I find them actually very receptive, and because I worked previously with PGRs, I know how to speak to them and what ticks their boxes, and it just seems like an easy audience. I think they're very receptive, they take on board what you say, they're happy to interact, they're probably an easier group of people to deal with than academics, as you alluded to before. So I've started with that. I've actually got it built into my own PDR now that I want to increase the number of workshops that I run and training that I do myself. So I am setting myself a target to make sure that I do stick to that and actually do keep engaging. Because if I don't speak to the academic community myself, I feel like the message will get lost. If the impact coordinator isn't involved in that process, then there's something wrong, really. So it's making sure I'm getting my face out there and people know that they can come to me. I'd say I still prefer to do smaller group sessions. So even one-to-one training, I'd rather speak to a small group of people and hear about their direct experiences rather than talking at a larger group. I guess it does. It just depends on the situation. Sometimes it's easier to talk to a larger group, especially with REF coming up. We've had several meetings where we've been trying to explain exactly what we're trying to do in terms of impact, in terms of outputs and environment. So we've had a series of meetings, and I've been a part of those, and we have Q&A sessions, and that's been a useful way of engaging with the academics, I think, as well. But through the impact action plans that I've set up, I'm having one-to-one meetings, or I'm involving the school impact coordinator in those as well. So we're actually having individualised sessions. We're talking through what impact is if they don't understand that, what kind of training we can do for them, how we can help them meet their objectives, setting them targets. So I find that the more personalised approach actually works a lot better.
Nice. So this one-to-one and small group kind of thing, it's a bit of a win-win in terms of it's an easy way to start. It's less intimidating for someone who's beginning, but actually the researcher also gets better value from that as well. You can do more tailored expert advice. So great. And also there you're building your visibility as a team, your credibility, trust in you, and ultimately you're going to have to all work very closely together. So I think it's really important, and I think it sends a slightly worrying message if you don't do any training as a team, and probably an inaccurate message based on the expertise that you have that wouldn't be appropriate. So really good in terms of how you build that trust and those relationships, and then move forward together. Now, moving to Davina. This is Davina Whitnall, researcher developer, University of Salford. That is your title. We've been talking about what you're doing here, and I'm going to be helping you do a more formal evaluation of that, just to look longer term over the coming years at the impacts that derive from this. But from talking to you already, some quite interesting benefits arising from this very long-term approach. Tell us a little bit now about, first of all, how you interact with Emma and her team, and then about this programming that you're doing for your researchers.
So the work that I do with Emma and as a team collectively is really around co-creating a strong programme of support, and we're really keen to co-create not just between teams across sections, and in a lot of places, and Salford's no exception, you can find different teams working in silos and not right across the board. So we work very closely together, break down those barriers. So a co-created product ultimately, but then also working with our academic communities and our research communities. We have, as I say, impact leads and other academics who feed into that agenda. So very much the training that we put in place is a co-created product, and it's not always internal, so we do feed off the external communities that we serve, and we have good connections with a lot of community groups, with the NHS, with other industries who obviously feed into that, because they actually are the people we're trying to serve, or the communities we're trying to serve, with the impact that we deliver. So that co-created model is really, really important, and we forge a training programme based around that. The work that we do more generally is focused on personalisation. So Emma's spoken a bit about the one-to-one meetings and approach, but we take that even further with the training. So we offer a training approach which is bespoke right down to the individual researcher, and we've recently developed 3-year plans where we can see forward 3 years, which helps us plan not just the resource we need for the next 3 years, but focus on the key areas. So rather, what has historically happened is sort of put our finger in the air and think, what is the direction to travel? And also develop a programme which is just in line with the university objectives. We can actually do it down to individual objectives as well. So we're co-creating a programme of training around individuals' objectives. We're also dovetailing that in with opportunity. So we have a strong ethos that if you have a piece of training, you go along to it, which is great. A week or two later, it may be forgotten unless you actually do something practical with that. So we also provide an opportunity as a follow-up within a week, 2 weeks, depending on the type of training delivered. So a good example is today. So we've had a number of different impact training sessions, and what we're doing in 2 weeks' time is a series of media training to really pull up on that. We also further forward have a festival of research, which is another opportunity for researchers to engage, and we push those opportunities as well as the training activity. So it's easy for a participant coming along to training to not only get a lot from that training itself, but plan forward and put it into practice. And that's really where the real learning and development happens, and hopefully as a result they see a real outcome as well as just turning up for the training.
Great. So just zooming out to kind of try and see the architecture of this. So Emma, you've spoken about an overarching impact plan and how you're then identifying the key training needs and capacity needs from your perspective strategically, and then in collaboration with Davina, then co-creating a long-term program of training and other capacity building type things. And then at the level of that training program, we've then got this 3-year process that you go through, which is personalised to the individual researcher. Tell me a little bit more, Davina, about what that looks like from the perspective of the researcher. How personalised can it be? Maybe give some examples, and tell me what kind of reaction you're getting from researchers.
So we have different levels of personalisation. I guess the least personalisation level is to bring people together as a group and enable and facilitate them to work together with similar research interests. And that builds on work that Sandy's done at Warwick, based around that model of bringing groups of people together and really tailoring the opportunities. The next level is a more detailed level where we look at the development need in a bit more detail, so we can plan a series of training, a schedule of training for that individual, and again connect them to others who may be interested in also taking part within that training. And then the most detailed piece of personalisation is an individualised training plan and coaching to support them. So it's that sense of encouragement and that sense of direction, but also a whole network of support. So not just the training, but development activities, opportunities, and also access to other staff and resources to complement that. So it's part of a bigger project, and it's a very different approach with what happens more broadly, which is sort of the scattergun effect, that we put this training out there and hope people come, and we find that that's not always the case. We've started doing the tailoring, so just at the end of the session today, one of the participants said, "Oh, thank you for that email. It clearly put it on my radar, and I decided to come along today because of that." So already this bespoke tailoring approach is starting to gather some traction, and hopefully we'll get to the stage where we're not doing a scattergun or blanket effect, but we are focused on groups or individuals.
Brilliant. So I wonder if you can tell me a little bit more about how researchers are responding to this. So it sounds like you're getting stronger attendance, which is a perennial problem. But tell me a little bit more about the reactions that you're getting, and what this means to people, and what they're now able to do as a result of this. And I wonder, because this is so personalised, whether there's also a bit of at least when you get to the coaching scale, there's a bit of a pastoral element to this as well.
Yes, so people, our researchers are actually quite surprised that we, number one, care. Perhaps they didn't think we did, but we do. And also I think it's easy for messages to get lost in what seems to be a blanket approach. So there is an element of surprise. There's also a will and enthusiasm to get on and do certain activities. So whether it's attending a training session or series of training sessions, or whether it's actually turning up to other activities because you've got somebody else in their corner championing them to do it and to support them. So from that point of view, I think they're surprised and encouraged. I think also the other positive outcome is that there's an opportunity to meet like-minded people rather than mere coincidence. So we hear stories of people going to a conference or to a piece of training and actually having good conversations and connections being made. And we'd like to continue that sort of idea, but in a more strategic way. So if we can get people together in the same room who have similar interests, perhaps diverse backgrounds, but even so, similar interests, encourage those conversations to take place, then we're really encouraging that networking and that potential collaboration to happen.
Brilliant. So finally, I want to come to Sandy Sparks. So you are organisational development consultant at University of Warwick, and you've been doing some similar things in Warwick. And I wonder, can we swap notes here? To what extent is this very similar? Where are the points of difference with what you're doing, and how's this working for you, Sandy?
Thank you. Interestingly enough, I think a lot of similarities. So we've taken a different approach where we have on one side the opportunity for building capability and capacity for the research active staff. So that's staff on research focused, teaching focused, and research and teaching contracts. And it's about sort of responding to need. It's about building a community. It's about having a range of opportunities. So on the one side, we have, I've had talk about 5 thematic areas, one around leadership, the second around career development, the third around skills, whether that's academic writing, impact, open access. The fourth is around that intercultural area of unconscious bias, those sort of areas. And finally, looking at creativity, innovation, doing things differently. So those would be some of the generic or general opportunities for people. But at no stage do we limit it as per your grade or your description. So you could do leadership training, for instance, 101, or decide that you want to do 102, realize actually, I want to actually go back and do number 1. So that's that side. But on the other side, we've done a lot of one-to-one support. And what's been very exciting is linking to some of the work at today's session was talking a little bit about impact. And so what we've done there has been looking at a couple of areas. So we've have the opportunity of the research active staff. They have network funding. We also have some of our leadership programs, our Preparing for Leadership, our Leadership in Action. And we also have one-to-one support, whether that's around coaching and mentoring, career development, leadership, whether it's around your academic writing. And one of the things that we've done is annually we actually do an impact report. And we ask people, it's undertaken independently by a researcher, so that that person doesn't feel they have to be nice, to say something nice because it's my training provision that I lead on. And with the impact reports that we do them annually. And we have some of them we've actually done since 2012. And we actually connect back with those individuals each year to find out what they're doing. We map that to an impact framework. So we're looking at things like the reaction, the learning, the behavior, as well as the outcomes, and actually hearing how people have got funding or benefited from their confidence. So a lot of what's already been said by both people before, the idea of supporting individuals, co-creating, being there so that the individual is seen as primary, but the drivers, I think, are things like the institutional benefit, the department benefit. It links to the strategy of the organisation, but also the strategy of the UK government funders, the international, the global environment in which the researchers are working. So it's preparing them for a number of environments.
Brilliant, thank you. I wonder, some people listening to this may be thinking, well, that's great for you guys, but there's no way we've got the resource to do that one-to-one. Are you serious? So what is it? Is it that you're just better resourced than other groups? Or is this that you're highly targeting? And if so, then how do you target who gets those opportunities?
I wish it was about resource. Working at the institution, there is only me on an 80% contract that leads that provision. But it's about actually co-creating it, working with individuals in departments, but also buying in external expertise and support, say, for instance, in academic writing or in impact, around research impact case studies. So it's buying in the support when we need it, but mostly it's about having a joined-up vision rather than a random knee-jerk reaction. It's also about creating communities of individuals. So some people, it's about that peer community, it's about that network, those groups of people who can help each other. An example I'll use there is around promotion. So we can then help and direct people. You may be a research fellow looking to talk to somebody who's a senior research fellow. They can share, they're happy to talk to you about that, they're happy to even share maybe their promotion application because they've been there, done that, bought the T-shirt or have the T-shirt. And so it's the opportunity of also, once you've been maybe the recipient of that, you're quite happy to help somebody else later. So it's about building a community, it's about building a network. It's also about, just today as an example, working with other institutions, working together rather than trying to be quite silo and individual. We have a finite resource. There's more and more demands on what we're needing to do. Constantly for researchers, research active staff, teaching staff, there's just more and more and more. There's never anything coming off. And it's about how we can actually support each other, just as much for the researchers. And
yeah, so I can see how that works to an extent. So I'm going to do some group-based stuff. I'm going to have a mentoring scheme amongst peers, and that spreads the load to an extent. But you're on 80%. Davina, I don't know how many people you've got in your team, and you both have this one-to-one element in this. Do you hire in teams of coaches, or to what extent is this about being very highly targeted? And if so, how do you do that targeting?
I think the challenge is, yes, we'd all like more resource, and within teams we're limited and often dealing with part contracts or a percentage of a person makes it very difficult, and also to have that level of consistency all the time. But I think having a strategy is really important because it means you can prioritise what you do. And although it seems quite resource intensive on the surface to deliver things in a one-to-one capacity and very personalised, actually in the longer term it's less resource intensive because you're being very targeted. So one sort of common anomaly of the sort of training sort of circuit, for want of a better way of putting it, is the fact that you end up having to repeat sessions over and over again because people can't attend or you haven't got numbers. So it takes away the necessary the need to actually repeat those sessions. You can run, instead of running 4 sessions, you can run 2 sessions and make sure they're full, and actually fill that time doing something else. So perhaps an opportunity. So there's still 4 points of contact, but actually only 2 of them are training. The other 2 are opportunities. So it makes the approach much more economical. It's almost like a piece of cake. You can't cut any more slices, but you can change the way you slice it. So that's, I think, one of the things that we end up doing. I don't know if you want to...
I'd absolutely agree with what you've said. That hence that need of having training, but also the individual bespoke training. Certainly, a couple of things about the individual. We have a very small budget. We have maybe one or two additional coaches, so it's not like there are hundreds that we incorporate, and that's mainly in areas of specialization around academic writing, maybe around research data management, where there's a particular need. So when people actually put the online booking form in, they actually state specifically what they are not wanting, needing, and in order to do what, how they're going to measure this. And as an example, when we do the impact report, I don't ask them for what was discussed in those individual meetings, but it's about what did you do as a result of that individual intervention? Where else, why couldn't you have done it without that individual intervention? What else, where else could you have got that help or that signposting, etc.? And then again, what else could you do to help? What could you do to give back? But where there is the opportunity sometimes, and particularly you've got to take your opportunity, so linking to your idea of being strategic, recently with obviously the focus of the REF, we have the opportunity of PVC for Research has provided some bespoke specialist funding for the next year, which is around one-to-one support, supporting academics who are needing to consider their REF, whether it's about publishing, whether it's about impact, whether it's about impact case studies. So sometimes there's about targeted resources when there's a need for it or it's really important, but also making sure that other people are not forgotten. So if you're not a refable person, that you're still considered because you're there for the next ref. So it's how we build capacity going forward.
Fantastic. That's really clear and achievable, I think. Well, you can decide yourself if you're listening, if you think, yeah, I could do that. But ask yourself that question. One final question I'm going to put to Davina now. As I was researching your work as part of this collaboration we've been developing around analysing what you're doing here, I discovered that you've written two very relevant books which inform your practice and your own training practice. So you also do consultancy work as a trainer outside Salford as well. And I wonder if you might be able to just tell us about those two books and some of the key messages that link to our discussion today.
So the two books that I've written, one which is particularly niche but relevant, which is called ER Stories, which is enabling researcher stories, and it's really a reflection on working with researchers through the doctorate, so at PGR level and beyond. And what's really interesting, and it's a piece of reflective practice more so than anything else, is how researchers respond to different initiatives, so such as REF, and also training which is on offer. I think one of the key messages within that particular book is to look at the wraparound support. So some of the work that Emma's doing is really, really relevant, that one-to-one linking and supporting with her teams, and also what Sandy's doing, being able to provide a range of support and really get to the crux of what it was that an individual wants or needs out of the training. One of the key messages within the book is triage, which is actually triaging and getting to that real need, because what we think we want and what we think we need are separate things, and actually we don't always get what we want, but we may get what we need, to quote a very famous song. But I think the key message is thinking about researcher development in quite a holistic way, rather than just bums on seats at training, or actually outputs in relation to REF or whatever other currency that you choose to use. The second book is called Ketchup, the confidence-building condiment, and the idea for Ketchup is confidence has an awful lot to do with how we do things, our success, our failure, and also our approach, and it is like a condiment. It can really excel and complement what's already there and bring out the best in individuals, and that's a more generalist book. It's not aimed aimed at researchers or a niche area in particular, but talks about developing confidence and doing it in a way that feels very authentic to you individually. Often when we ask of confidence, people feel that they're faking it until they make it, and that's a relevant strategy and works for some people but not everybody. And within the researcher and academic community, there's extroverts, there's introverts. The extroverts are probably more likely to fake it until they make it, but what do we do with the introverts? How can we support them and develop their confidence? And what we need is quite a different approach, and it has to feel real, it has to feel authentic. And if you're doing something that feels real and authentic, it's easier to do, and you're more likely to do it and sustain it. So those are the key messages within Ketchup.
Thank you. I've got a copy of your catch-up book here. It's witty, it's short, and I think most academics I know feel like they're faking it and they're never making it. The imposter syndrome thing is a real thing, and I think what is really good about this is you've got the tips and the tricks and really practical strategies, but at the core of this is that authenticity that you're talking about, really understanding quite deeply who you are as a researcher, what you have to offer, and believing in that, and then that's the foundation upon which you can then use all of those strategies. And I think to conclude, this for me in terms of capacity building, it's about motivation, it's about skills, and then ultimately it becomes about confidence. And I think that as we as a sector think about what we need to achieve to skill up and equip and facilitate researchers to achieve change, to achieve good in this world, we need to start by understanding the motives of researchers, what they're taking to this, and engaging individually, because we're all very different. And I think that this personalised approach, and especially the one-to-one element in here, enables us to not have that one-size-fits-all, and you should all be amazing at impact and want to do this. Yeah, there are a lot of us who don't actually want to do impact. That's not why we came into research. And I think coming at that from, well, what are my intrinsic motivations, and what can I then take into impact from that actually satiates my desire for new knowledge, that drives that curiosity or whatever it is. There's a huge missing step from a lot of things that I'm involved with around impact, where we just make a bunch of assumptions that, well, everyone wants to make a difference, surely, but actually, well, maybe not. And that personalised approach enables you to take that more empathic approach. And then skills, well, great, and we can learn lots of things, and you're giving people the chance not only to learn but to practice those skills, great, over time. But ultimately, it's the confidence that we need, whether that's the confidence, as Emma was talking about at the beginning, to get out there and say, you know what, I've got something to offer, and I'm going to develop my own training here. Or whether this is academics being given the opportunities to create their own safe spaces, to try out the things that they've learned, so that they actually build confidence over time. But ultimately, it's a deep approach. Just giving people skills and kind of dropping it there, leaving it there, with nothing before, nothing after, is, in my experience, more likely to lead to failure and embarrassment and things going wrong than to anything that is sustainable or actually genuinely does work in terms of enabling those researchers to do what we all ideally want to make the world a better place. So Emma, thank you very much. Davina and Sandy, a really insightful set of thoughts today, and I hope you all feel inspired to go and think about your own training needs in a more strategic way, and think about how you train and equip and inspire others in a much more holistic and joined up way than ever before.